See, this chapter is why I say appreciate the good times. Enjoy the moments where Hilda's saying you are a true warrior, Thorfinn. Enjoy the moments where they're growing crops and playing games with the natives, because those happy moments are destined to fail. And this chapter is definitely a testament to that. I was not expecting a Vinland Saga chapter today, and when I read it, I just was, my mind was blown every single panel. Not necessarily because things happened that I didn't expect, but just how well executed the things that are happening really are, and how everything goes back to the very beginning of the story. I really think everything about Vinland Saga is within that opening prologue, not the prologue arc, but Thorfinn being a child. Like before it time skips to Thorfinn with Askeladd's band, everything in that beginning segment with Thor's trying to pass down his lessons to Thorfinn, with Thorfinn's idealization of the knives. I always go back to that scene where he opens the trunk and takes out the knife, and just that allure of it, which I think this panel right here, the cover page, the chapter page, this is that same theme, that same idea happening decades and decades later to new people, but it's the same exact idea. And maybe it's just something that us as human beings are susceptible to no matter what. Maybe we have to go through and experience hardship to understand realities of pain and destruction that these things bring us. You know, maybe it's just not possible. Maybe it's not even possible to learn the lessons ourselves without having to go through a dark, destructive period. But I think that this cover page with everybody's hands going towards the sword, the allure of the sword, and the idea that a sword was built for battle, for combat, for conquest, for overcoming other people, for slaying, for killing, right? That's the purpose of the tool. Whereas the other tools in Vinland, you know, axes and hammers, whatever else they have that can be used for killing, that's not the purpose of the tool. The purpose of the sword is for that, right? I love how the natives call it the big knife. I might start calling it the big knife from now on, but that's what it's always been. And I think it just comes full circle. I don't know when that chapter was originally released, you know, whether it was like 2 decades ago, whenever the opening chapters of Vinland Saga came out. But I think everything kind of circles around to that moment and that allure of the sword, and that's what this chapter is. The only thing upsetting about this chapter to me is that we still did not cut back to Thorfinn. It's been like 2 or 3 months since I've seen Thorfinn, and I'm just like, what is happening with him and Hild? I need to know that. But also the things that are happening here are really, really ingenious. And again, I think that if you stuck it out with Vinland Saga, now I didn't really find anything in the Vinland arc to be boring. You know, some people did because action and combat and, you know, the tension wasn't building, but it was laying all of the foundation for these moments to happen. And now that it's here, I feel like this chapter is kind of vindication for everybody that stuck it out with Vinland Saga the entire way through. You know, so many people might have dropped it during this arc, but I think that this chapter really brilliantly pulls a lot of things full circle from like the very beginning of the story, with Thorfinn seeing the knife for the first time, but also the very beginning of introducing these characters like Ivar. The chapter goes on, and the thing that I found really, really interesting here was that these characters, you know, they're very like strong, competent people, but they've never been in a combat experience before. And so they fall right into the trap of the natives. And it's just so like, on the one hand, you kind of feel justified because of how much shit that Ivar's talked over the years, and because Stark, that we saw was kind of the mastermind behind this, that's kind of inciting all of these, you know, complications. But at the same time, I do really like Ivar as a character, and like with all Vinland Saga characters, he's very nuanced, and so seeing him in this situation, my heart sank, because I know that he's inexperienced. I know he doesn't know what he's doing. Anybody can swing a sword, but to call Ivar a swordsman would not be accurate, you know? And they've never been in war. They've never been in combat. They've never had to deal with the situation. So right here, they ignited the flames. And I thought this was really clever, too, that the natives ignited the flames to draw people to the flames to wonder what's going on, illuminating them in the darkness so that they could later pelt them with arrows. And again, things come full circle, because how did Thor's die? Being pelted by arrows, you know, being lured out into a particular situation. these things happen. It's cyclical, or is that the word, cyclical? It's the same things that happen all the time, you know, but in different creative ways. And it's just interesting to see how Yukimura writes it, but also is it, you know, like I said, are human beings just compelled to repeat the same things over and over? So I thought this shot was brilliant. I thought this was a really great shot with the night sky, you know, seeing like the beautiful stars and then those stars raining down when you realize they're actually arrows. You know, I know there's stars and arrows in the shot. That's just how I interpreted the page. So here we see Gangladdie jumps in front of the arrows to save Ivar's life, and he doesn't make it through this. We actually lose a character in this chapter because he gets an arrow right in the back of his neck. They're not fucking around, all right? These arrows were meant to eliminate these people. Like, this is not a joke. This is not a warning. This is legitimately the beginning of the war. Like, this is it right here. And Ivar, you know, there's nothing he can do. Gangladdie, pelted with arrows. He's stuck. He gets a spear in his hand. And then this guy, I forget this character's name, but the guy that's kind of leading the charge of the natives burning down all the huts here and invading the territory, he comes here for the sword, the big knife, being allured by the sword once more. And this next moment is something I really didn't expect. So Ivar, I got to give Ivar credit. You know, the man stands back up. He literally just witnessed his friend, you know, die in front of him, saving him, right? And he lost his sword. He's been stabbed in the hand, but he stands up and grabs an axe and is willing to throw down. And I just got to hand it to him because, like, you have never been in a situation like this. And so there's two ways a character could go, right? You could get that adrenaline built up and do whatever you can to try to defend yourself. Or, you know, you could curl up into a ball and cry. Which actually, ironically, is what Cordelia did. But then she, you know, got back up to be kind of like the barrier to protect the child. And I think Ivar here is experiencing a similar situation where he's got to stand. Like, what's he going to do? You know, he's got to stand up. He's got to try. You know, I guess he could run, but they're all there. They have arrows. It's just like he's in a lose-lose situation, you know? But I really didn't expect this. So they attack each other, and Ivar loses his fucking hand, paralleling the first use of the sword in Vinland, where he cut off the shaman's hand. Is this karma? Is this retribution? Or is this just Ivar understanding what it's like to be on the other end? I don't know, man. And it is harsh. You know, I said this when that chapter came out, the one where Ivar cuts off the shaman's hand, that because it had been so long since we've seen any kind of combat in Vinland Saga, it felt more real. Like, it felt more visceral to see somebody's hand get chopped off. Because we're not really in the middle of Vikings fighting or anything like that, you know, like the end of the Baltic Sea arc, you know, there's so much combat happening that it just kind of is all over the page. It'd been so long since then that when the shaman got his hand cut off, you felt this sinking feeling in your chest. And I feel the same thing with Ivar right here, is like, this feels real. You know, this feels like real consequence. This doesn't feel like manga, anime, action violence. This feels like a man literally got his hand chopped off. It's the way Yukimura draws it. It's the way it's built up. It's the way it's been built up. And it's also that parallel, once again, with an earlier scene in the manga. And yeah, just the feeling of, like, imagine just looking down at your arm and it's just not there. Like, 2 seconds ago it was there. Now you no longer have a hand. He lost his sword. He lost his hand. He lost his friend. They're surrounded by enemies. There's just, this man is going to either be broken beyond belief or rise into being a hero of the story in some way. And don't think that it can't happen, because it's happened with other characters that we despise at first, right? Like, think about Sigurd and stuff. And then there's the victory. And obviously, like, he just got his arm chopped off. So he's like, you know, he curls up. He's bleeding out. It just, that's never what I wanted to see for Ivar. I know some people hate him. I know there's a lot of fans out there that hate him. I never hated him. I always considered him to be a misguided person with good intentions. You know, at the end of the day, really. That's how I saw him. And so this is just tragic that now he's thrown into the situation that he had idealized for so long. And I think as dudes, we sometimes have this, right? Like every dude has that fantasy of like people attack him and he like John Wicks the fuck out of everybody, you know? But you know, real violence is real violence, and it's different, and it's chaotic, and it's not structured, and there's no point system, you know? This is replicating real violence. You're just subject to it, you know? You don't have any control. And it ends with the victory being the native holding the sword or the big knife. So it's like, man, this is an intense chapter, dude. And I really don't know where it's going to go from here, because if we think about it, you know, Einar's on his way back. He's going to come back to see all this chaos. Gudrid gave birth, you know, and Thorfinn and Hild are still, as far as I'm concerned, like within a combat scenario. You know, they're being chased through the wilderness. At least that's the last thing I remember. I haven't gone back and reread these chapters since they came out, so I'm going by like 2-3 months of memory here. But, you know, at last I remember, yeah, that's where Thorfinn and Hild were. So, you know, and also if they manage to make it out of this, if Ivar manages to make it out of this, I don't know if Einar's going to show up and help, but Einar's not a fighter, so what's he going to do, you know? Cordelia might be able to do something, but she's, I thought the whole purpose of her chapter was to defend, not to attack. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can definitely say that I think Vinland Saga is going into a really great direction with this. Yes, it's tragedy, you know, but after so much time and also kind of understanding that this you know, this was never going to work. It's a great idea, and I believe in Thorfinn, but it was never going to work. And now we're being shoved back into reality and seeing real violence, you know? So, yeah, I love the chapter, you guys. Let me know what you thought about it down below. Leave your thoughts, ideas, and opinions about what's going to happen in the future. I hate these month waits. You know, it's great to be caught up with a series, but then when you got to wait like another month after something like this, you're like, oh my God. Whatever. Let Yukimura cook. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Please give the video a like and a comment. I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you guys in the next chapter review. Also, before you leave the video, I do want to shout out a special Patreon supporter of mine, HugoArt, and his new manga, Domain and Damazana. He's got 7 chapters out so far, which you can find in the description of this video. It's about 2 child siblings that escape from an abusive father and are trapped on an island full of cannibals. It takes some inspiration from African folklore, as well as some series like Gantz and Hunter x Hunter. As far as I can say, it's got a lot of dark and intense imagery in it, but to juxtapose that, the relationship between the siblings and their love for each other is what ties it all together. They are wholesome, good characters in its center, surrounded by unspeakable horrors of their world. The artwork is really solid, and it seems to be working with some really interesting concepts as it goes along, so I would say give it a shot. Like I said, there's only 7 chapters so far, so what do you got to lose? You can read them all for free down below. Also, go ahead and follow his social media links, which are also linked below. He's putting up visual episodes of the chapters on his YouTube channel, with dubs even, and sharing the process of drawing and paneling the series both there and on his TikTok. Anyways, it's good to have artists supporting each other and artists supporting artists, so go give them some love and check them out.